A jury says social media platforms contributed to harming children. Now a Texas lawmaker wants kids off those platforms completely.
We're committed to the fight. We're committed to protecting our kids in Texas from, again, what I believe is the most dangerous product that they have legal access to.
Is it protection or overreach? We look at the debate that could soon play out at the state capitol. Texas communities raising concerns about data centers.
I don't think anybody in the legislature, or for that business in the country, ever saw this wave at the speed it's come on board.
We look at how lawmakers are responding amid questions about the strain on water and power supplies. State leaders say they're finished building the border wall.
And that piece of our history is now complete.
We look at what was built and what wasn't as the state moves on.
Produced from the Capitol in Austin and airing statewide, this is the award-winning State of Texas.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Josh Hinkle. This week, a California jury found both Meta and YouTube liable in a first-of-its-kind social media addiction lawsuit. The jury decided the social media giant and video streamer designed their platforms to hook young users without concern for their well-being. The plaintiff was a 20-year-old woman who said her use of social media as a child worsened her mental health struggles. The jury awarded her $6 million in damages. The companies issued statements vowing to explore their legal options, which include appeals.
Did Meta violate the Unfair Practices Act by engaging in an unfair or deceptive trade practice? The jury answers yes.
One day before the California verdict, a jury in New Mexico determined that Meta knowingly harmed children's mental health and concealed what it knew about child sexual exploitation on its platforms. The father of a teen who took his own life after being lured into cybersex spoke about the importance and the limit of the verdict.
We're happy that that a jury recognized this, and then that a state, like New Mexico, has decided that they're going to pursue it to this degree. And we've said that from the beginning that we need people that are willing to fight for our kids. I mean, do you ever think about things and you recognize a change and it benefits other people, and you wish it could have? You wish it could have benefited you. And so that's Walker's not coming back. So very thankful, very hopeful that there will be significant change.
The verdicts have renewed calls in Texas for more regulations on big tech to protect young users. State Representative Jared Patterson has vowed to refile legislation to ban minors from having social media accounts. I spoke with the representative about the plan. This week, a jury found Meta and YouTube liable for harm to a young user, citing addictive design features. Do you feel that that this verdict validates your push to ban minors from social media altogether?
Absolutely. It's not just parents saying it anymore. Now we have an American court, actually two, in New Mexico and California, now saying that this is not a bug, this is a feature of the social media platforms to hook their users onto their platforms, hook them on the product, and really kind of destroy their mental health. And that's been proven now in two American courts. It's very welcome news for those of us attempting to help protect our children.
Okay. Do you see this as a turning point, similar to, I'm thinking like the tobacco litigation, where courts are now doing what lawmakers haven't yet done?
Yeah, I think that's a great parallel because we learned so much as a nation about nicotine and about tobacco products, over the course of time. It's been the same thing with social media. Gen Zers, actually, the first group to actually grow up with these, nearly half of them say that they wish that these items wouldn't have even been invented. And so, the folks that have even grown up with it understand how dangerous it is to young people.
So your bill would prohibit minors from 18 from having social media accounts. Why a full ban instead of tighter regulations like parental consent or usage limits?
Yeah, we've tried some of those things, and quite frankly, they're hard to enforce. Last session, we got a day away from passing a bill that had anyone under 18. I think next session we're going to go back under 16 to mirror what's happened in other countries. For example, Australia just passed their own ban for anyone under 16, not allowing them to have access to this harmful, dangerous product.
Would your bill give parents the option to decide whether to allow their children to have social media, or would it just be a full ban?
Yeah, after the age of 16 or older, then they would have the option, certainly. We don't want to encroach on parental rights. But I think as a state, we have a long history of saying, the rules are different for minors than they are for adults. A minor can't go buy alcohol, a minor can't go buy cigarettes, a minor can't go out and buy a handgun, all because their physical well-being is going to be jeopardized if they do that. And so as a society, as lawmakers, we have said, no, you can't do that as a minor. And really, this is no different. This is the most harmful product that our teens have legal access to in this state. And we're going to make sure that they no longer have access to that and the problems that come with it.
You have filed this bill before. It failed to get through the finish line. What's going to be different next session?
Man, we were so close. So 2 sessions ago, we filed it, really got no traction whatsoever. We had an interim study committee last time that I co-chaired and got a lot of great information out of that. We came back last session, made it through a House committee, through calendars, through the House floor, through a Senate committee, and was 1 day away from being voted on by the full Senate. So we were almost there. So look, sometimes it takes several sessions to get bills passed, but we are committed to the fight. We're committed to protecting our kids in Texas from, again, what I believe is the most dangerous product that they have legal access to.
What does success look like? How would you measure whether this law actually improves outcomes for kids?
Yeah, we've got to see suicide rates and self-harm rates decline. In fact, suicide rates were on the decline until about 2011 in the state of Texas. And since then, it's been like a hockey stick. Again, 150% increase over the last 2 decades. Now the number 2 cause of death amongst teens is suicide rates. Now the number 1 is guns, but that includes suicide by gun. So, it is an epidemic, not only in the state of Texas, but nationally. And I think success for me is less kids with mental health problems, less kids with anxiety, less kids with that addiction to the social media, and ultimately less kids harming themselves or even killing themselves as a result of this harmful product known as social media.
All right, State Representative Jared Patterson, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, sir.
It's legal today, but it will be banned in just a few days. Texas hemp retailers are bracing for a big change that could put many of them out of business. Texans across the state are pushing back on data center developments.
What we're finding is data centers aren't a red or blue issue. This is about people being concerned about big sea changes in their community.
The big questions and the policy response as the data center debate grows in Texas. In Texas, a big change is coming for the hemp industry. Smokable, intoxicating hemp products will be off store shelves by the end of the month. A new rule from the Department of State Health Services effectively bans the products. The move could force many shops across the state to shut down. Industry leaders fear this could result in tens of thousands of jobs lost. Capitol correspondent Erin Zwiener has the story.
There is no more steps. This is unfortunately the end of this process.
Intoxicating hemp flower in Texas is on its deathbed. New rule changes coming from the Department of State Health Services will ban the substance on March 31st. Hemp store operator Nicholas Mortellaro says this will cripple his businesses.
With that off the table, you're going to see 60-70% declines, at least in our business, but I think statewide as well.
Mortellaro will stay open by selling intoxicating drinks and edibles, which will remain legal. But between the smokable ban and the price for a store license jumping from $150 to $5,000, many shops will likely close.
You're talking about shuttering stores, employ over 50,000 Texans.
These rule changes stem back to this executive order issued by Governor Greg Abbott after vetoing a total hemp ban. One of the advocates for that ban, Aubrey Adams, says DSHS's new rules are a step in the right direction, but don't go far enough.
They've got to push this line back to save Texas, to protect public health and safety.
The intoxicating hemp industry, who have been facing a ban like this for over a year, have been looking for ways to keep going. But for now, their options appear limited.
I'm sure there's going to be lawsuits filed. Do we have some in the pipeline?
Well, I'm not going to show you any cards, but you can make an educated guess as to that.
For State of Texas, I'm Erin Zwiener.
Going in depth, the battle over these products kicked off last March when Texas lawmakers voted to ban intoxicating hemp products. But in May, Governor Abbott vetoed that legislation. He called for more regulation rather than an outright ban. In September, Abbott issued an executive order listing out changes he'd like to see, including these recent changes finalized by DSHS. After billions of dollars and years of work, Texas officials say construction on the border wall is done. We look at what that means and what happens next.
This is an issue for Texans across the state.
Texans are raising concerns about data centers, how lawmakers are responding to questions about what they mean for water, power, and local control. Huge AI data centers could be an economic windfall for Texas, but a lot of Texans are concerned about the cost to their communities. State regulations are supposed to protect us from paying for the large amounts of water and electricity these businesses need. Grace Gates shows us how those rules are about to be put to the test.
I don't think anybody in the legislature, or for that business in the country, ever saw this wave at the speed it's come on board.
A $3.5 billion data center expansion in Dickens County, one of the dozens of tech projects popping up around the state and causing concerns about the cost of electricity.
But you can't double your electric grid in 5 years. What we told people that were coming here for AI is you got to figure out your meters.
The Texas legislature passed Senate Bill 6 last year. It requires Texas's Utility Commission to come up with new rules that make large load customers pay to connect their power supply with the ERCOT grid.
Now the ones that are pulling from the grid, they've already been figured into the capacity a decade ago.
Galaxy was approved to use 1,600 megawatts of electricity. According to ERCOT, that's enough to power 320,000 homes, or 3 times the number of households in Lubbock.
I would be shocked if half of these companies wanting power would get that kind of allocation.
If proposed rules are approved, these centers could pay $100,000 per megawatt for interconnection.
Recently, the White House said these people are not going to eat your charge. I mean, I think that was a pretty clear directive. Most of the companies knew that.
Another concern, water usage. A Galaxy spokesperson saying impact to local water supply will be minimal with its closed-loop system.
Properly done, the water usage is not unsurmountable.
Perry says new tech is helping companies conserve.
We're going to see air-cooled facilities that don't use hardly any water. So there's just things like that that's coming and evolving.
Grace Gates, State of Texas.
Lawmakers in different parts of Texas are hearing concerns about the growth of data centers in the state. Earlier this month, State Representative Helen Kerwin sent a letter to Governor Abbott asking him to consider pausing the development of large-scale data centers in rural communities. The North Texas Republican raised concerns about the potential strain on water supplies and the electric grid. Kerwin's staff told us she has not yet received a response from the governor. In Central Texas, another state representative is leading a group to help address data center concerns. Will DuPree spoke with State Representative Erin Zwiener about the plan.
This is such an interesting conversation because so many people are talking about this, but you formed what you're calling a working group on this issue in Hays County. How often are you hearing from people in your district about data centers, and what are they telling you about that?
You know, for myself and my colleagues across the state, we are hearing about data centers almost constantly. Folks are talking about them in Hays County, in Hood County, in Van Zant, in El Paso. This is an issue for Texans across the state.
Okay, so explain what kinds of concerns you'd now like to examine for your area using this working group and why that's important.
Yeah, so to me, some of the most important issues are always water and then local authority, the ability of our communities to have a voice in how the area around them grows and changes. Hays County has been the tip of the iceberg for a lot of these issues because we are the second fastest growing county in the nation. So we felt the challenges of transportation, of public safety, and again, most importantly, water. What this group is going to do is look for solutions, either tools that we have available at the local level with the various entities involved, or if we don't have the tools we need, we're going to put together some policy proposals to take to the legislature.
You're leading right into my next question about what the goal of this is. Is it to come out with maybe a list of policies that you can go to the legislature next year during the regular session to introduce?
I think that will be one of the objectives. One of the other objectives, though, is going to be to talk through what tools entities like the special utility districts or the county may have that they can use already. And that's challenging. The legislature has not given counties a lot of tools, and changes made to annexation starting in 2017 have pushed more and more growth into the counties and out of the cities, which reduces the voices of our communities in deciding what that looks like. So I think data centers are one issue, but This issue also occurs with chip plants. It also occurs with residential developments. Our counties need more tools to make sure they can grow smartly.
Something that potentially could complicate any kind of reforms to AI policy is the president's executive order that he signed back in December. It effectively tries to stop, a patchwork of policies state by state regarding AI. Do you anticipate that potentially blunting any kind of progress toward enacting reforms at the state level?
So I don't think the presidential's executive order has to deal with that. I think it has more to do with the technology use itself. What we're looking at is the physical facilities. Now, there is huge pressure coming from the top to develop these facilities and develop them quickly. And that's part of what's confusing is there's 250 gigabytes of proposed large load centers, mostly data centers right now. We all know that not all of those are going to be built. The question is which ones are, and can we make sure we build them in smart ways that make the best use of our electric and water resources.
I want to talk about the membership of your working group. So you've shared a list of the first round of people invited to be a part of the working group. They range from elected county leaders to members of local water associations and everything in between, it seems. So what kind of work is happening to potentially attract and maybe listen to voices from the other side of the political aisle? I mentioned that you're a Democrat there in the state legislature, but what can you say about addressing that?
Well, I'm partnering with the 2 county commissioners in Hays County from San Marcos, where we're seeing the data center proposals. And one is a fellow Democrat, Debbie Gonzalez-Inglesby, but the other's a Republican, Morgan Hammer. And across the people involved, there are people on both sides of the aisle. There are folks who are very apolitical. What we're finding is data centers aren't a red or blue issue. This is about people being concerned about big sea changes in their community that change the dynamic on the ground, and they're concerned about water, and they're concerned about noise, and they're concerned about it affecting their electricity prices.
And
those aren't partisan issues.
Yeah, and before we wrap up our conversation, I'm sorry to cut you off there for a second too. What is the timeline in terms of meeting with the working group, and what does that look like to be able to talk with them?
Yeah, we're working through everyone's scheduling dynamics right now, but we're hoping to have our first meeting within the next month. I expect we'll have 4 to 6 meetings this year and hopefully come up with some action items for everyone.
All right. We will have to follow up on this conversation another time once all that happens. So State Representative Erin Zwiener, thank you again for taking the time and talking to us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
State leaders declare success on the border wall.
And that piece of our history is now complete.
We look at what was built and what wasn't as the state moves on. Texas says it's done building border walls. After spending billions of dollars for more than 80 miles of wall, the state says it's done with construction. But there are still gaps in the wall. Border Report's Sandra Sanchez looks at what's been built and the decision to stop.
This is the first section of state-funded border wall that Texas built starting in 2021 here in La Grulla. Now it's overgrown with weeds and vines, and the state says it's done building border wall.
Mission accomplished.
In a meeting last month in Austin, Texas Facilities Commission Interim Director Will McCarroll said the state agency oversaw construction of 82.2 miles of border wall.
All of the crews are leaving or have left, and that piece of our history is now complete.
The agency was put in charge of construction after Texas Governor Greg Abbott started Operation Lone Star in 2021, using state money to fund border wall and National Guard troops because he said the Biden administration wasn't doing enough to protect the border.
Just a little over 4 years ago, we placed the first panel on the border.
The state spent over $3 billion to build just over 80 miles of border wall, most of it in Starr, Hidalgo, and Zapata counties. The state had planned to build 800 miles of border wall, but last year, as President Trump's administration passed the Big Beautiful Bill allocating $46.5 billion to border walls, the Texas legislature cut off wall funding, and that left some gaps.
We're standing at the end of the first section. Additional segments were built, but don't quite connect or meet to it. It's like that all along the border.
Abbott says Texas is the first and only state to build its own border wall. He claims Operation Lone Star has led to over 500,000 arrests of people trying to illegally cross from Mexico into the U.S. and has led to drug seizures and decreased fentanyl coming across the border.
This 1.5 mile section of border wall is one of the last finished by the state. The General Land Office bought this land here near Garciasville because they said at the time Mexican cartel were running drugs as well as trafficking women and children right here in this area.
The state and federal border wall look identical, rust-colored steel bollards rising up to 30 feet. In Starr County, Texas, Sandra Sanchez, Border Report.
While the state has stopped construction, the federal government is still looking at places to build border walls in Texas, and that could end up shutting down a popular birding spot near the Rio Grande. The Salineno Wildlife Preserve sits on the border with Mexico in far western Starr County. The last season, the preserve had more than 2,000 visitors, identifying more than 100 types of birds. Maps on the U.S. Customs and Border Protection website show plans to build a wall through that area. Construction would include patrol roads and technology like cameras and lights. The caretaker of the preserve worries construction could clear out critical bird habitat and keep visitors away.
You know, we don't know what the plans are. If it was, bulldozers and gravel trucks coming, right behind our garden here, it would be hard to imagine how we could welcome guests here.
Congress approved $46 billion for new border wall and river buoys paid for by the Big Beautiful Bill. Lawmakers previously had exempted the Salineno Wildlife Preserve from border wall, but this bill made no exceptions. Thank you again for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. We'll be back next week to bring you an in-depth look at Texas politics.